What's up, everyone? Pittsburgh White Schwartz bringing you another deck tech today. This one's going to be pretty special. I don't think a lot of people know about this deck, and Rurouni Kenshin is coming out in English very soon at the end of the month, and I don't think a lot of people have this one on their radar. There's a lot of decks in Rurouni Kenshin that you could play, stuff like 8 Door or 8 Stock Soul, but the one that I want to talk about is this deck focused on Yahiko, which is 8 choice. It is a very aggressive deck, and though it's not seeing a ton of play overseas in Japan, the few people that are playing it are converting with it very well. I've also played it quite a bit since I've had Kenshin since release, and this is definitely one of the more interesting decks that you could play in the set, so let's take a look at the list. The first thing you're going to notice right off the bat is there are a ton of Yahikos in this deck. I messed around with this kind of combo package on release, but couldn't really get it to work because I was trying to play a lot of the generally good cards that exist in Kenshin. But as it turns out, the best way to play a list like this is to hit a critical mass of cards with Yahiko in name, so that your engine cards always work no matter what's on your board, even if they're not the best cards individually. But like any aggressive deck, it's got a ton of zeros, and we're laser focused on this one combo that's going to come out right at level 1 and be super big. So let's just hop right into the individual cards, and we'll break down how this unique deck works. Starting off with a full stack of this Yahiko, this is the most important card in the deck. This is the main engine that makes the whole thing tick. So when you play a choice, as long as you have 2 or more other characters, choose one of your characters and give it on reverse search. This is with this choice climax here. The climax combo is pretty good, but the most important part of the card is this second ability. You can pay 1, tap 2 of your characters, and look it up to the top 3 cards of your deck to choose one character from among them, add it to your hand. That is not a Brainstorm effect, it is a guaranteed plus. Check 3, add 1. This will move you through your deck, add cards to your hand, and more importantly, as we sack Yahikos off to bring in bigger Yahikos later, allow us to kind of quote-unquote float our board into more hand. We are going to be running low both on stock and hand in this deck, but the fact that you can turn your board characters that may live cross turn because of their large power, since they are coming out very early, back into cards, sack them off with the climax combo to bring standing cards back in to attack, and then continue the loop. If we can attack 3 times a turn, tap down our living cards or 4 cards to get 2 more, and then continue to attack 3 times. We will slowly go resource positive, provided that we keep getting climaxes. However, we might have to spend resources to get climaxes. We'll get into that. But yeah, pretty powerful level 0 combo. It's definitely no Elizabeth, but pretty strong in his own right. Moving into some more Yahikos, we are playing a 4 count of the on attack Azusa, and when he's played, he gets 1500 power. Good way to turbo through your deck to make sure your 2-0 Yahiko's engrave, which you'll want to be as early as possible, as well as just deck control and ditch outlet throughout the game. Of course, is a Yahiko, so he's a target for all your stuff. Keeping on with the 4 counts, we're going to play 4 of this Yahiko's drop search, just a normal pay 1, ditch 1 drop searcher for any Kenshin character, as well as having a very unique on attack scry effect for your opponent's deck. So on attack, you can pay 1, look at the top of their deck, leave it there, or put it to the bottom. Can be nice to side and shove damage through to make sure that you're getting that damage in there. If you see a climax, that's really great, but the best way that you can possibly use this is to pay out trigger choices, since you get a stock off your choice, which then you pay out that choice immediately to the waiting room, get that little scry effect to help you possibly get through some damage, and then on the following turn, tap down your Yahikos to get a card back. You don't always have to use that effect to pay out that choice immediately, but if you're about to go into your refresh, it can be pretty nice, and then of course an endgame can help you chip that damage through. And then the last 4 count here at level 0 is going to be the clean cut. We have a lot of cards that we want to float to the back row, save to another turn. Not only our level 0 climax combo, but our level 1 Kaoru that we want to have around so that we can not only tap them down to get more cards off our level 0 Yahiko climax combo with his act effect, but also just use them for climax combos on the next turn. So we got a lot of targets all throughout the game, and even though this guy's only a 3k, if you can ever sniper reverse against your opponent where you can cut something back, you should take the opportunity to do so. We also want to attack a lot early because we are a very aggressive deck. We want to shove a lot of damage, so tri-laning with a clean cut is our ideal level 0 scenario. No Kenshin deck would be complete without playing the Kaoru Brainstorm, which is one of the most individually powerful cards in the set. It is a self-tap salvage Brainstorm with on-play, pay 2, search your deck for a climax that has the same name as a climax in your waiting room. So as long as you have a copy of the climax that you want for the turn in your waiting room, you can slam down a Brainstorm, pay 2, and go grab it right out of your deck. Again, this is a very aggressive deck. We want to slam climax every single turn to not only push damage, but activate our effects and change out our Yahikos. That's the main way we're going to quote unquote, again, float our board back into our hand and then put it back down. So having a CX tutor effect like this is extremely powerful. Floating one of these in your hand every turn, if possible, when you can pick it up or grab it out of your deck off your climax combo, is definitely something you should be trying to do. Because we're going to be tapping down our board for the Yahiko effect more often than not, we're not going to use the Brainstorm effect very often. We're going really fast, so we're not going to get that compressed since we're spending a lot of our resources on performing our combos and getting our hand back. So we're not going to get a lot of value off the actual Brainstorm effect, but it is there if you need it. Just one Ricky as a way to rip our combo pieces early out of deck. You could play more, but again, you got to hit that critical mass of Yahikos in your deck or the whole deck kind of really doesn't work. As you start to shave them, the whole strategy becomes shakier and shakier. The way that the deck is now, where all the Yahikos that are really good and playable are pretty much maxed out, is definitely the way to do it. We do have this kind of as a safety net so that we don't get level locked, as well as being able to rip maybe a level 1 power out of our deck so that we can have another 2-0 Yahiko hit the board at level 1. On attack, it can also give 1500 power. Our Yahikos do get really big, especially on attack with the climax combo, but if you do need any more power, it is a very nice extra utility effect to have on a Ricky. One climax swap, no other effect. Climax swap from grave, pretty standard. And then one of this Yahiko. He is a global 5, and when he hits the board from your hand, you mill 2. If there's a climax among those, you can choose a character in your waiting room and put it into your stock. So you mill 2, hit a climax, get a free stock. You most certainly could play more of this and less of the drop search, but the fact that the effect's not very consistent and you have other tools for deck speed mean that this card in this deck doesn't really have much of a chance to shine. It's just kind of that last Yahiko to bring us up to a good number, but you could absolutely switch the counts between this and the drop search. Probably the weakest other Yahiko card if you like this effect a lot. Moving into level 1, we have this 1-0 Kaoru, which combos with the other Yahiko choice. It's a frontal 500 assist and climax combo. You can sack a Yahiko on your board to the waiting room to choose the 2-0 Yahiko in your waiting room, place it on stage in an empty slot, and that turn it gets 3000 power. The Yahiko itself is a 2-0 4K that gains 5000 power if all your characters are the Kenshin trait, which they will be. And then when this card's battle opponent is reversed, so you have that same choice that you brought it in with at level 1 or at any point else in the game, you get to burn your opponent for 1. This is extra instances of damage as early at level 1. The Kaoru again sacks those Yahikos off of our board, meaning it doesn't matter if they're tapped. We can take our Yahikos that have either already done something or are no longer useful, tap them down with this Yahiko to get a card back up to twice with 4 of our 5 slots, then sack them off with Kaoru and bring in our 2-0 Yahiko standing not only at 10k with climax, but also the extra 3000 power from changing off Kaoru's effect, as well as an additional 500 with 2 Kaorus in the back row, although that's not common since you typically want to keep one of your level 0 Yahiko climax combos around, means that you can be possibly 14 in the center lane. That is obviously a massive power number for level 1, being that early in the game, meaning that you will undoubtedly run over anybody's stuff, even if they're playing the biggest of standby decks. Not only at level 1, but probably well into level 2 and even at level 3. Part of the big reason that this deck is seeing success overseas is that decks like Love Live Hasunosora that play for the board are very popular. Being an aggressive deck that can run very lean, that runs over its opponent's stuff very easily for a very low cost, while also doing extra damage when it gets those reverses, is obviously going to see some success when the meta is like that. Time will tell what kind of meta English will be in once we get the meta going, but with stuff like Nino and other board-based decks running around all the time, and just the general popularity of standby, means that Yahiko will probably find a niche somewhere, sometime, no matter what meta he's in. That extra damage goes a real long way since it comes online so early. Extra inches of damage at level 1 are almost unheard of. That's pretty much the core strategy of the deck, but supporting it going on into level 2 is this 2-1 Yahiko and Sagara. We've seen this profile before in Macross, and I've been on record as saying I think these are really, really strong. This is a sack bouncer. So when this is played on stage from your hand, you can discard a card to salvage a character, which is obviously really great for a deck that wants to recur the same cards all the time. And then we can sack this off our board to bounce a character. Notably, this card again has Yahiko in name, and we're running a lot of copies of it. So with 5 total board slots and 4 stock, if you wanted to make this play, you could play this down, salvage a card that you need, tap it down with the level 0 Yahiko to get a card back, sack it off to bounce one of your opponent's important cards, then tap down your other 4 slots to get 2 more cards, slam that Kaoru choice, trade off those Yahikos for the 2 zeros, which can also be himself, by the way. Yahiko himself can be tapped down for the effect of level 0 Yahiko, getting you a card back, then sacked off with Kaoru, because this is also a Yahiko, to immediately put him back on the board. He fulfills both conditions here. He is a card with Yahiko in name, and then he is the 2-0 Yahiko, meaning we can sack off a tapped version of himself and then immediately put himself back. Again, you're not going to have a wealth of resources in this deck unless you get some lucky early first deck cancels, extending your level 0, giving you a little bit of an extra stock threshold. But if you're ever in that position, that is a good way to disrupt your opponent's board, refill your hand, and keep slamming and keep up that 2-0 Yahiko pressure. And again, 2-0 Yahiko is pretty big, so it's actually pretty common, especially if your opponent stays at 1, that your opponent actually won't be able to run these over. So being able to tap him down, get cards back, and then immediately sack and resummon him is more common than you'd think. We're also playing a lot of counters. Again, we run pretty lean and our Yahikos are pretty big. So the chance that we're going to have the ability to play these at level 2, since we're going to have our big board, they're level 2, so they're hard to side despite being costless characters. So the fact that we're going to be able to kind of slam these down, not care that we're spending the resources on them since we run so lean, means that just having access to them, having extra copies of them is going to be very good. The first is the free fresh counter. We have some deck speed, but not a lot, especially if we trigger poorly and we want to at least have climax available to try to cancel rather than just kind of accept our terrible deck state and have to just deal with it. So having 2 eject buttons in the way of this free fresh counter, since we again don't care about using our stock very much, can be very nice. We're also playing 2 of the money counter. This is one of those 5 or more can't deal damage counters for the character in battle. So your opponent attacks in, you play it, and then not only do you not take damage from the attack, but if they have any end of attack or on reverse burns, you will also not take those, because the card cannot deal damage to players. You can also give any of the characters on your board 1500 power, so you can get a little bit tricky with that. The main issue with this card usually is that you gotta have a full board. However, we're spamming out our board every turn. These Yahikos get absolutely massive, and we're slamming our opponent again and again and again very, very quickly, trying to not give them any time, push as much damage, as well as having these large beat sticks on board. So it's actually kind of likely that we're going to have 5 or more characters on board more often than not, especially at level 2. Don't be afraid to slam this down early against something if you think it's going to keep you in the game and help you keep up pressure. But again, the main reason here, Yahiko's a level 2. He's really, really big, even cross turn, especially early in the game. So it's a lot more likely that we're going to fulfill that 5 or more condition than a traditional deck. And just a couple of level 3s here to round out the deck. We're going to play 2 of this 4 or more early play. It gets 1,000 power for each of your opponent's back row characters, putting her to 10-5. And then when she's played on stage from hand, as long as you have 2 or more other characters, you can ditch a card to choose any card in your clock and add it to your hand. That refresh point climax can go from a terrible bit of misfortune to extra gas for your hand, whether it is the level 0 or the level 1. Just keeping up pressure, getting cards back, or pushing more damage is all good for you. One of this other 4 or more early play that's also a Yahiko, you could tap him down to bring in a 2-0 Yahiko if you wanted or needed to, but that won't be very common because he has his own burn effect. On attack, you can drop 2 cards and burn 1. And then on play, he also draw 2, drops 1, and gains 3k. So he also swings very big, keeping in line with the high attacking power of our deck and digging us into a possible climax. So a little way to cantrip, get more climaxes, gives us more gas so that we can keep going, and serves as a bit of an off finisher. And lastly, this Sagara. He gets 1500 power and hand on core if all of your characters are the Kenshin trait, which they will be. And then when you play him, you can choose one of the following 2 effects. You can heal normally, put the top card of your clock in your waiting room, or you can Fumio your opponent for 1. They'll choose 1 climax from their waiting room and then shuffle the rest into their deck. A little bit of decompression that also doubles as a healer and encore beat stick for your aggressive deck is very nice, just going into level 3, giving you the option to do so. Here's the list all laid out one more time. This is definitely a really interesting one to play. It's actually really fun to pilot. Tabbing down your board, sacking it off with the Kaoru, bringing in the 2-0s. The look in your opponent's face when you tell them at level 1 that when your Yahiko gets a reverse, you get to burn them is really awesome. It's a lot more interesting and intricate to play, despite being an aggro deck, than a lot of the other Kenshin decks, which just kind of boil down to 1k1 good stuff. This one is definitely a lot more unique, and again fulfills a very specific niche in a possible meta where it is an aggressive deck that can push extra damage, that can run really lean, but also simultaneously does very well against big board decks, which are traditionally very defensive, since Yahiko gets so big and it's so easy for you to pull off. Having those defensive screw yous lined in there, since the Yahikos sit pretty big cross turn and your opponent isn't really incentivized to side since they're level 2s, is also an interesting feather the deck has in its cap. As a big fan of Rurouni Kenshin, the franchise, when I was a little kid, I used to watch this show with my dad. I have very fond memories of the franchise. I was super hyped for the reboot, super hyped when it came to Weiss, but kind of disappointed when I finally got the set in my hands, because again, those 1k1 good stuff decks aren't very interesting to play despite having some powerful effects. Thankfully, this one is super fun to play, super interesting, and has a very cool niche, so I implore everybody to try it out if they can. And with that, we're going to wrap up here. Definitely wanted to get something out for Kenshin. Again, I'm super busy. It's hard to get these set reviews scheduled, so I wanted to get something out there, something that I don't think a lot of people are going to cover. I don't think a lot of people really know a lot about this deck specifically. They're probably looking a lot more at 8 Door, maybe 8 Pants, maybe 8 Stock Soul. But this Yahiko deck has kind of flown under the radar, and it's something that from when it was sent to me, I immediately took to it, started playing it, and had an absolute blast. I actually took this deck with me to Japan, played it quite a bit, not only against other foreigners when I was there, just playing friendlies, but also in Japanese locals. And it does very well. So if you're someone who's a bit sus on it, definitely sleeve it up or give it a spin in one of the many simulators. It's absolutely super fun and very potent to play. And with that, Pittsburgh White Schwartz signing off, and we'll see you all in the next one.